Give him the ball.
This ball goes to Billy Kilmer because he...
Welcome to Shap One-on-One, the man who played 16 seasons in the National Football League, a man who started his pro career as a running back, receiver, and a punter, and became a quarterback who led his team to the Super Bowl. Sonny Jurgensen's buddy, John Brody's understudy, Archie Manning's predecessor, and Joe Theismann's, the man with one of the great nicknames in NFL history, Billy Kilmer. Billy, thanks for coming here to Victory Yard. The late Jim Murray once said of you that you never missed a receiver or a drink in your life. Now, I presume that has something to do with how you got the nickname Whiskey, but it wasn't the main reason, was it?
No, the main reason was because I had this ruddy complexion, red complexion, and all the guys just assumed that it was from whiskey, and they'd call me Whiskey or Whiskey Red, you know, and I'm not a whiskey drinker. I'm just a beer drinker.
You know, other guys may have had better statistics in the National Football League, but did anybody ever have more fun than you had?
Well, there was only one guy, maybe it was Bobby Lane. I guess so, but no, I tell you what, I had a lot of fun, but, you know, I also was dedicated to my work, and I practiced hard. I didn't ever go to sleep at any meetings. I was attentive, you know, and, you know, I took a lot of pride and care in my job and what I did. But, you know, off the field, sure, I had fun. I loved to be, you know, with the guys. We had a lot of team parties and a lot of fun, and that's what it was all about.
Did you know Lane? Did you know Bobby?
I knew Bobby very well. I knew him later on, not as when we played because we were a little different. I think he retired my first year in the league after '61.
But not from the night stuff.
No, I guess not. No, but later on, you know, we formed a quarterbacks club that had a golf tournament every year, and Bobby was the leading guy with Don Meredith, and we still have remnants of that today. And Bobby, I'd see him every year, and we'd have a lot of fun, and we got to be real close. I went to his funeral, and
they don't have enough characters like that anymore.
Well, they don't seem to create characters like that anymore. But I think because of the money, and because of agents, and because of a lot of things, you don't see the camaraderie as much as you did when we were coming up or before me. You know, we just had each other, and we went out and played for the fun of the game, and, you know, money wasn't as big then. We didn't have to go to our stockbrokers. We were lucky to live off that a half a year, whatever we made.
Who were your favorite characters besides Bobby?
Well, you know, I came up with the 49ers, and I had a bunch of them. Bob St. Clair comes to mind. He was great, and Leo Nomalini and John
It's still not
Brody.
easy to say.
No, not really. Those guys, we had a fabulous group of guys and great talented kids in those days, and didn't win a whole lot. The Packers came up and beat us all the time, but I could just remember having a lot of good times and a lot of fun. You know, it's fun in those days too. In '61 was before the jet planes, and so we would have to do road trips. And we spent, 2 weeks in Milwaukee, and everybody said Milwaukee was a bad town. I found it to be a great town. And 1 week in Chicago, we had to spend 1 week in Chicago, and those were fun road trips.
And of course, then you went down to New Orleans, which is a real hard town to go to sleep in.
Yeah. Well, I was first expansion, was on the expansion draft and went to New Orleans, and found out what Bourbon Street was all about, and to play in that town and then have to fight Bourbon Street, you had to be some kind of an athlete, I think.
Did you ever hear of the old Absinthe House?
Did I ever hear of it?
Or did you invent it?
That was my office.
Well, later on it was Paul Hornung's office too. But one time Bill Curry told me once that he bumped into Hornung in the old Absinthe House. And I was not surprised that Hornung was there, but I said to Curry, who was a divinity student, I said, Bill, what were you doing in the old Absinthe House? And he said, well, you don't play in the NFL without going through a wilderness period. And that was his wilderness period.
That's right.
Who were some of the characters down there?
Well, I played with Doug Atkins.
Oh, that's enough by himself.
Right there in your is enough. Steve Stonebreaker was another one. Danny Abramowitz. We had a good crew down there, and the first couple of years I was down there, in fact 3 years, when Doug was anchoring that defense, we had a great defense. We just couldn't move the ball well enough, to win a lot of games down there. But, the Doug Atkins stories can go on and on,
My favorite ones, I heard once that he was driving and he got cut off by a truck, and he got out of his car and took his gun and shot the engine out of the truck.
Yeah, that's true. But I wasn't there at the time. The one time I remember was in training camp, and it was kind of late after curfew, and we were all in bed for a change. And I heard the rookies upstairs were playing some music, loud music, and I heard Doug yell at him, shut that music off. Nothing happened, and I heard him yell again, shut that music off. So I was kind of getting to sleep. All of a sudden I heard pow, pow, pow. And I ran into his room, and here he was leaning out of the room, shooting a little Derringer up into the thing, and you could have heard a pin drop, man. You never heard any more music for the rest of the year.
Why did a guy who was about 6'9", weigh about 300 pounds, why did he need a Derringer?
You know what he's told me? He says, is anybody crazy to fight me on the square? He had a point.
There was a basketball player in the NBA who never went to college named Reggie Harding, who was 7 feet tall, played for the Detroit Pistons, and used to carry a gun with him everywhere he went. And Dave DeBusschere was his coach and said, Reggie, why are you carrying a gun? And he said, in case anybody messes with me. And Dave said, you're 7 feet tall, you weigh 300 pounds, who's going to mess with you? And he said, you never know.
Oh.
We'll take the customary break and then return to One-on-One with Billy Kilmer.
We got a guy like Billy Kilmer can come in and lead the team and help us, and that's what we want.
Welcome back to Victory Yard and One-on-One with Billy Kilmer, whom George Allen called one of the most underrated players he ever coached. Billy, you didn't have a great arm. Your legs got beat up badly. You weren't a fanatic about training. How did you last 16 years and 2 seasons you were out hurt in the National Football League?
Well, like I told you before, I took my job real seriously because I always wanted to be a professional athlete. I didn't know if it was going to be baseball, basketball, or football, and ended up playing football. But I trained as hard as I had to get out there on the field. Now, one thing that really set me back was that car accident I had in 1962 that shattered my leg, and the doctors came in hours after it happened and said that I might lose the leg because of infection. Well, that kind of sobers you up real quick right there, and it's something that I said I'm not going to let this keep me down, and I worked awful hard getting that leg right and coming back to play professional football, which was my profession. Now, I spent 3 years with the 49ers after that as a backup quarterback, and I got my real chance with the New Orleans Saints. And I knew I was going to have to work hard, and I was going to have to be smarter than the other guys. I was up against a guy named Gary Quazzo, who had a great arm, a little kid around here that played for the Giants, Gary Wood, who was a good scrambler and had a good arm. So I had to be a little smarter and a little tougher to play. And I knew the Saints was an expansion team, and they weren't going to have the best offensive line in the world. So I knew you'd have to be a little mobile, you're going to have to be smart to move the ball and win a job, which I ended up doing in the preseason. I ended up starting as a quarterback for the Saints. Now, to go on further with that, I played against George Allen twice every year when I was with the Saints for 3 or 4 years. And I always moved the ball against the Rams. We never beat them, but I always moved the ball. And for some reason, he liked that, and he told his players, I remember Clark Miller was on his squad, and Tommy Mason had come to me one time after a game and says, George Allen really likes you. He wants to trade for you. I says, I can't play here. Roman Gabriel's here. He's in that. I didn't think George was ever going to leave the Rams. Well, it's funny how fate comes, and he goes to the Redskins, and I'm his first trade. And I end up going up there, and I really didn't like going to the Redskins because I was going to have to play behind Sonny Jurgensen, and I figure I'm 32 years old, going on 33, and I want to go and play somewhere. Maybe, there's other teams that needed quarterbacks. Well, it's funny how everything fell into place, and that Sonny got hurt in the exhibition game that year, and I came in, and you know, when you got a good running back like Larry Brown and you got a great receiver like Charlie Taylor and a pretty good good offensive line, all you got to do is don't make mistakes.
And you and Sonny were competing, but at the same time, you became great friends.
Yeah, we really did. You know, the big reason for that was I had played 10 years in the NFL, never on a winning team. Sonny had played a number of years in the NFL, and he had been on one winning team, but never as a player. You know, he was with the Eagles, but Van Brocklin was a quarterback. So we've been basically on losers all our lives. We knew that George had something going, and we didn't want to rock the boat. And all we want to do is be part of a winner. And like he says, you know, we didn't have one good body between us, but, you know, we could, you know, play a few games and help each other out and win, and that's what we really did.
The year you went to the Super Bowl, Sonny was hurt and was out a good part of the season. You may have had your greatest game against Dallas in the NFC Championship game.
Yes, I did. That was that probably of my career. I wish I could say it was a Super Bowl, but I didn't win it. So it really was that game against Dallas in the championship game.
14 for 18 and
yeah, 14 for 18. I really when I threw that, I broke the game open with the first pass in the fourth quarter on play action. I had Charlie Taylor for a long touchdown, and that broke the game over, made it 17-3. And then our defense came up and made them turn the ball over a bunch of times. So I never threw it again in the fourth quarter because Kurt Knight kicked 4 field goals or something. That's what made the final score 26-3.
And the game was played on December 31st.
New Year's Eve.
Was that a good New Year's?
It was a great New Year's Eve, man. I'll tell you, that was probably one of the greatest New Year's Eve I ever spent. I know it was the cheapest one I ever spent. I never bought a drink in that town.
How tough was it after that, going into that Super Bowl game? You were playing the Miami Dolphins, who were trying to complete the first undefeated untied season in the history of the National Football League, and you really had a shot at them. But things didn't go well for you.
Well, you know, if we'd have played that game within a week, I think we would have done a lot better. You know, you get 2 weeks between the Super Bowls, and we had never gone before. And, you know, it was a funny week. We had to go out to California. It was the first game was ever played at noon, you know, and I always say, I wish it hadn't been played at noon at 4 o'clock. I'm not woke up at noon. I'm ready at 4 o'clock.
I was the same way for that game.
So it really wasn't that so much. It was you know, we were favored in that game by 2.5 points going into that game.
And George Allen kept talking about the distractions.
Yeah, the distractions. Plus, we had a pretty good week of work. We really practiced well that week. And we didn't have those distractions. We stayed down in Orange County, and everything flowed good. I got the flu about 2 or 3 days before the game, but they gave me a shot, and I was fine for the game and everything. It's funny how when the day comes and you start to play, you put on the uniform, and all of a sudden, there's no emotion there anymore. You know, you could feel the team wasn't emotionally ready, and why? I don't know. Because we practiced good, we had good emotions for that whole week, but it wasn't a real well played game either, Dick. On both sides. I know the Dolphins came out and scored 14 points in the first half.
One with just a minute left, one of those touchdowns.
And then in the second half, neither team really, we went up and down the field, never missed a field goal or two, and I hit the goalpost with Jerry Smith wide open, and then I threw, you know, a bad interception to Jake, probably got him the MVP award then.
We're going to take one more break, then we'll come back and talk more about Jake Scott with Billy Kilmer. Welcome once more to Victory Yard and to One-on-One with Billy Kilmer, who spent 16 seasons playing in the NFL with San Francisco, New Orleans, and Washington. We were talking about the Super Bowl game in which Jake Scott made 2 interceptions for the Miami Dolphins, and I was the person who picked him as the MVP, for which Manny Fernandez will hate me forever. I probably made a mistake, but Jake was such a good guy. You had never met him before that game, had you?
No, I'd never met him, and the first time I met him was in the Pro Bowl the week later. I went up and talked to him about it and everything. I said, at least, Jake, you can give me the keys to that car and let me have it for half a year.
Because he had picked off 2 of your passes.
Yeah.
Did you bond that week at the Pro Bowl game?
No, really, actually, well, I just had talked to him, during some of the luncheons we had, and then really it's when we traded for him about 2 or 3 years later, and he came with the Redskins and played with us 3 years, and we ended up, rooming together and everything. That's how we got real close.
How did you know that you two were of like mind?
I guess the first time, went out for a beer, I knew he was, he's a free spirit, and he's his own man, and that's what I liked about him.
And you went into business together eventually.
Yeah, we owned a Chrysler Plymouth dealership together, and we were, we made money and had, a good time.
Did you play two ways when you were at UCLA?
I played two ways for 2 years, and the last time I played defense was against Pittsburgh. It was early in the season, and Mike Ditka was on the Pittsburgh team. I played 3 years against Mike 3 years in a row, and so I was playing free safety, and we were up by about 17, 18 points, and they ran 3 touchdown passes right by me in the fourth quarter, and that's the last time I played defense.
And of course, when you came into the NFL, you were a running back, sort of.
Well, Red Hickey had the shotgun offense in those days, and I was drafted to run the shotgun offense, but Red made a mistake because when we put it in as our regular offense, we rotated all the quarterbacks. Well, my forte, I could run, and I was in on first down, but what really made that thing go was a run-pass option. And they never let me go in where it was kind of an iffy, like 2nd and 5, or, 3rd and short, or Brody always went in on 3rd and long, and Bobby Waters went in different situations. And so I think they used it wrong. Of course, we had good success there for about 4 or 5 games. I scored 10 touchdowns in a half a season.
That's not bad.
And then we went to Chicago, and Sports Illustrated did a layout on us the week before, and we were supposed to be the offense of the 60s. Well, we went into Chicago, and Bill George put a cork in that shotgun, and I never saw the article.
And Brody was a better golfer than you.
Oh, yes, much
We'll
better.
take one more break and then resume our conversation one-on-one with Billy Kilmer. Welcome back to Victory Yard and to one-on-one with one of the NFL's most popular and colorful players during the 60s and 70s, Billy Kilmer. Billy, you played with and against so many great quarterbacks in the period. Unitas was around, Namath, Sonny. Who was the best quarterback you ever saw?
Oh, boy. That's hard to pin down one guy that's just the greatest. Of course, Unitas won so many titles, and he was, was a master. But the best pure passer I've ever seen is Sonny Jurgensen. And, just pure, I've seen him, thread the needle. It looked like the ball weaved through linebackers, over linebackers. He had such a great touch with the ball, not only the long ball, but the short pass, and great timing. The kids today don't have good anticipation. Boy, he could see a hole, and he could lay the ball in that hole, and the receiver would go into it. I learned a lot from Sonny. Learned a lot about throwing the football. I mean, I didn't have the strongest arm, but he taught me how to use my hips and my arm. And I never got a sore arm after I came with the Redskins. And I always used to get bad elbows or something because I'd throw off my back foot a lot. I learned a lot from Sonny. But Bart Starr won a lot of titles. I had a lot of respect. He was one of the smartest quarterbacks that ever played. Of course, Joe, he won that Super Bowl and was a great passer. But, Terry Bradshaw, I played against Terry. You can't say he wasn't great, I hate to say there was one guy, that stood out among all of them, but I will say this, Sonny Jurgensen was probably the best pure passer of all of them.
The two guys who had to step into your shoes, Archie Manning in New Orleans and Joe Theismann in Washington, were they rivals? Well, no, you were gone before Archie got there. How good were they?
Well, in Archie's case, I always kissed him. I said, "You got me out of purgatory. I got the Redskins," and I always felt sorry for Archie. But Joe Theismann, I played with him from '74 to '78, and
was he a shy, quiet kid?
No, never was. That. He's talking all the time, but. In '78, I knew it was over. They got a new regime. Bobby Beathard came in, and they wanted to get rid of all the over-the-hill gang, and they brought Jack Pardee in, and I knew they were going to try to see if Joe could play at all, and so I ended up getting a 2-year contract out of it, guaranteed as an insurance policy, and in '79 I didn't play, but they had to pay me, so I thank Joe for that.
In your 16 seasons, what was the biggest hit you ever took?
Well, I guess the biggest hit was in we played a playoff game in '72 against Green Bay, and on third down I went back to throw, and I got hit on one side this way and another side, the 2 defensive ends. I think Clarence Williams was one, and forgot the other guy's name. But one hit me here and the other guy hit me here, and I still have this lump still today, and they carried me off the sidelines. And I'm sitting there, and they're giving me some smelling salts, and the doctors asked me to read the scoreboard, and I'm trying to read it, and I'm really groggy. And about that time, the Packers are getting ready to punt, and Richie Pettibone comes up to me, and he says, Billy, you got to get back in the game. And I said, well, why, Richie? He says, well, Sam Weiss is back there warming up, and he's already thrown 2 interceptions. Sam don't like to hear that.
Sam, but yeah,
That's the truth, though. That was the truth, and I
you.
started laughing, and I got back in the huddle. I didn't miss a play.
I've never met a quarterback who doesn't remember the hardest he ever got hit.
Well, that was one, and Jethro Pugh slugged me in the cotton pole one night when it was grass, and I remember laying on that grass. He got me. He didn't mean to slug me, but he came around. He hit me in the jaw, and I always wore one face mask, right? And I went down on the ground, and I remember that grass seemed so good. I just wanted to lay in that grass. But I got up and got out of there.
We'll break once more, then we'll return to Shap One-on-One with Billy Kilmer. Welcome again to Victory Yard and to One-on-One with Billy Kilmer, Super Bowl and Pro Bowl quarterback after the 1972 season. Billy, after you stopped playing, you moved to Dallas. What is that like for a Redskin to live in Dallas?
Well, it's interesting. The reason I moved to Dallas was I got in a banking concern that Clint Murkison owned, and he was the principal owner in it. Another guy was kind of headed up, and I was the marketing director, and we owned 7 banks in 4 states. So I was real close with Mr. Murkison, and I got to go to a lot of Cowboy games. But I was very quiet, and I didn't root very hard either. But I was very friendly with Clint, and I was with him very close to a week before he died, and I really admired the guy, and like I say, I kept a low profile in Dallas.
Did you give any pointers to Meredith on how to play and how to live?
No, but Don gave a lot to me, too. He's a little older than I am, maybe a year. No, but I didn't see Don a lot in those days. I'd see Roger Staubach and when I lived there.
That's right, of course. You would hang out with Staubach, not with Meredith.
Yeah, right.
Billy, thanks very much for visiting
Pleasure,
us
Dick.
here.
Great.
It was really fun to talk with you and to hear your memories and opinions. Thanks to our viewers, too, for watching ESPN Classic.